If you can't control your emotions, people will control you. And the uncomfortable truth is, most people never realize this is already happening to them. They think they're making decisions freely, but in reality, their reactions are being shaped, subtly, constantly, by fear, rejection, approval, and invisible social pressure. That's why they feel stuck, why they struggle to build discipline, why they drift through relationships without direction, always adapting, always reacting, but never truly leading their own lives. Welcome. If you've ever felt like you're surrounded by noise, expectations, opinions, constant comparison, and yet somehow disconnected from yourself, then this is not just another video. This is a breakdown of a psychological pattern that quietly separates those who remain controlled from those who take control. Because what most people call confidence or strength is often just performance. But there's a deeper behavioral framework, rare, uncomfortable, and often misunderstood, that changes how a person thinks, reacts, and exists in the world. In this video, you'll understand why most people never develop what is often referred to as the wolf mindset. Not because they can't, but because they unknowingly adopt habits that keep them dependent, emotionally reactive, and socially conditioned. You'll see how subtle patterns, like the need for validation, avoidance of discomfort, and fear of isolation, gradually shape a personality that seeks safety over autonomy. And more importantly, you'll begin to recognize how these patterns may already be influencing your own behavior without you noticing. But here's where it shifts. This isn't about motivation or surface-level advice. You're going to be exposed to a different way of interpreting your emotions, your habits, and your interactions. A way that forces you to confront something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The possibility that the life you're living is being negotiated by forces you never chose. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Stay with me until the end, because this might hit closer than you expect. And once you see it, it's hard to ignore. Think about the last time something small completely changed your mood. Not something big, just a message that didn't come, a tone that felt off, someone acting slightly different than usual. It wasn't dramatic on the outside, but inside, it lingered. You replayed it, tried to read between the lines, started connecting dots that may not even exist. And suddenly, something that should have taken seconds took over your entire headspace. That's the part most people brush off. They say, "I'm just overthinking," or "I care too much." But look closer. It's not random. It follows a pattern. You don't react like that to everything, only to certain people, certain situations, certain triggers. It's almost like parts of your emotional system are wired to respond instantly, without asking for permission. Like your brain skips the thinking part and jumps straight into reaction mode. And the scary part is, it feels normal, familiar, like that's just who you are. But here's where things start to shift. Because if your reactions are predictable, they're not really under your control the way you think they are. Think about it. If someone knows what makes you feel ignored, insecure, or anxious, they don't need to do much. A delayed response, a little distance, a slight change in energy, and your mind fills in the rest. No confrontation, no direct action, just subtle pressure. And you react. Not because you chose to, but because something in you was already trained to. And this doesn't come out of nowhere. It builds quietly. Every time you hold back what you really want to say just to keep the peace. Every time you check your phone hoping for a response that makes you feel okay again. Every time you adjust yourself to avoid feeling uncomfortable. It seems harmless in the moment, almost necessary. But over time, those small moments stack. They teach your brain that your emotional stability depends on what's happening outside of you. So when something shifts externally, you shift internally. Fast, automatic. And that's where most people get stuck without even realizing it. Because from the outside, everything looks fine. You're functioning, talking, living your life. But internally, there's a constant sensitivity, like you're always slightly on edge, waiting for something to confirm or disrupt how you feel. Now here's the uncomfortable question most people avoid. If your mood, your reactions, and even your sense of self can be influenced that easily, how much of what you feel is actually yours? And more importantly, how long has this been happening without you noticing? Don't skip this part, because this is where most people start to feel exposed, even if they can't explain why. There's a habit you probably repeat every single day without thinking twice. It doesn't look harmful. In fact, it feels normal, almost necessary to function socially. But over time, it slowly reshapes how you see yourself and how much control you actually have. It shows up in small moments. You open your phone not because you need to, but because you want to check if someone responded. You walk into a room and subtly scan the energy, adjusting how you act based on who's there. You think twice before saying something real because you're already calculating how it might land. None of this feels dramatic. It's quiet, automatic, but that's exactly why it's powerful. Because every time you do that, you're sending a message to your own mind. My baseline isn't enough. I need something external to confirm I'm okay. And the more you repeat that pattern, the more your sense of stability starts depending on things you don't control. A notification, a reaction, someone's tone, their presence, or their absence. And here's where it gets deeper. Studies on behavioral patterns show that the brain adapts to repeated emotional cues faster than we realize. The more you seek validation, even in subtle ways, the more your brain starts prioritizing it. It becomes less about choice and more about conditioning. That's why it's so hard to just stop caring. It's not about willpower anymore. It's a trained response. You might have seen this play out without naming it. Someone who seems confident but constantly checks how they're being perceived. Someone who looks independent but can't sit with silence without reaching for distraction. Or maybe this hits closer. Maybe you've felt that hesitation before sending a message, that pause before being honest, that internal filter constantly running in the background. Not loud enough to notice, but always there. And the cost of that habit isn't obvious at first. You still go out, talk to people, live your routine. But something shifts internally. You start second-guessing more, overanalyzing more, adapting more. And without realizing it, you become easier to influence, not because you're weak, but because you've trained yourself to stay aligned with what feels safe instead of what's actually real. Breaking that pattern doesn't start with a big decision. It starts in moments so small most people ignore them, like noticing the urge to check your phone and not acting on it immediately, feeling the need to adjust yourself and pausing just long enough to question it, saying something honest, even if it creates a little tension, not to prove anything but to stop reinforcing the loop. Because the longer that loop runs, the more it shapes you into someone who reacts instead of chooses. And once that line gets blurred, it becomes harder to tell where your real self ends and your conditioned behavior begins. Stay with this, because this is where people usually nod their head and then go right back to doing the same things that keep them stuck. Everyone loves the idea of becoming mentally strong, independent, unshaken. It sounds powerful. It looks impressive. But when it comes down to what it actually requires, that's where almost everyone quietly backs out. Because developing what people call the wolf mindset isn't about acting tough or shutting people out. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about being able to sit in moments most people can't tolerate. Silence, uncertainty, not knowing how something will play out, and not rushing to fix it just to feel better. That's where the real shift starts. And for most people, that feeling is unbearable. Think about how quickly people reach for something the second they feel uncomfortable. A distraction, music, their phone, conversation, anything to fill the gap. Because being alone with your own thoughts, even for a few minutes, can feel heavy. Like there's something underneath the surface you don't fully want to face. And instead of dealing with it, most people learn to escape it, over and over again. But here's the part that flips everything. That discomfort you keep avoiding, that's exactly where control is built. Not in the loud moments, not when everything feels good and easy. It's in those quiet, almost invisible moments where you could react, but choose not to. Where you feel the urge to chase, to explain, to fix, and you pause. Not to play games, not to prove something, just to see what happens when you don't immediately follow the pattern. And no one talks about how strange that feels at first. It doesn't feel empowering. It feels off, like you're going against your own wiring. Like something in you is saying, do something. Don't just sit here. That's the moment most people break. They go back to what's familiar. They send the message. They fill the silence. They close the loop. And just like that, the pattern stays intact. But if you hold that pause, even for a few seconds longer than usual, you start to notice something subtle. The urge doesn't control you as much as it used to. It's still there, but it's not automatic anymore. And that's where things begin to change. Not overnight, not dramatically, but in a way that builds quietly over time. Because the people who develop that level of control aren't different. They just stopped running from those moments. They stopped needing constant feedback to feel steady. They let things be incomplete, unresolved, even uncomfortable, without immediately reacting. And that creates a kind of presence that's hard to explain, but easy to recognize. So when people say most will never reach that mindset, it's not about intelligence or discipline. It's about tolerance, the willingness to face what feels empty, uncertain, even a little unsettling, without trying to escape it. And if you really think about it, the difference between staying where you are and becoming someone more grounded might come down to a few seconds in those moments. Seconds most people never even notice, but always act on. So here's something worth sitting with for a moment. If your reactions have been shaping your life more than your decisions, then maybe the real shift isn't out there. It's in the space between what you feel and what you choose to do next. Because every time you pause instead of react, every time you stay grounded instead of chasing relief, you're slowly taking back control most people don't even realize they've lost. And maybe that's the difference. Not being fearless, not being perfect, but being aware enough to stop repeating patterns that were never truly yours. Because the truth is, most people will spend their entire lives reacting to emotions they never learned to understand. But the ones who step out of that cycle, they move differently, they think differently, and over time, they build something most people are still searching for: real control over their own mind. If this made you reflect, take a second to notice where in your life this is already happening. Not in a dramatic way, but in the small, everyday moments. Because that's where change actually begins. And if you're ready to start seeing things more clearly, psychology, human behavior, emotional control, this is exactly what this channel is about. If you made it this far, don't just scroll away. Take action on it. Subscribe now for more videos on psychology, human behavior, emotional control, and the patterns that silently shape your life. Drop a like if this made you think differently, and comment below what part hit you the most. It helps more people find this content. Now here's something important. Watch the video in the card on your screen next, because it connects directly to what you just learned and goes even deeper into how your mind works under pressure. And if you really want to understand these patterns step by step, go through the full playlist on the channel. It's designed to build your awareness in a way most people never experience. And if you stayed until the very end, comment a number from 1 to 3 based on the part that impacted you the most. I read every single comment.